Himanshu Sharma. On the behalf of Team Physio Inculcator, I would like to welcome you all in our today's session. Today we have a very good elite resource person with us to share their expertise on the topic biomechanics in neurological rehabilitation, its analysis and intervention. So we are much privileged and honored to have Dr. Manoj Kumar Deshmukh sir with us. Dr. Manoj Deshmukh sir itself is a personality of eminence, is a person of excellence, and Dr. Manoj Deshmukh sir itself is a big name in the physiotherapy. But still, as being a moderator, my responsibility to introduce our today's resource person of the day, Dr. Manoj Deshmukh sir. So before introducing, I would like to extend my warm welcome to you, sir, on the board to spare your precious knowledge,
Thank you.
incredible knowledge with us to share your views with us. We are really privileged to attend your session today. Dr. Manoj Deshmukh sir is specialized in neurology from University, and he has received gold medal for their academic performance during the PG studies. Dr. Manoj Deshmukh sir is currently working as a demonstrator in the Government Physiotherapy College at Raipur, Chhattisgarh. His primary area of research is neurorehabilitation. He has published numerous papers in the Journal of International Repute. Dr. Manoj Kumar Deshmukh sir is also having 3 intellectual property rights by their name. He is also presently a member of IFT in the UNESCO Chair of Bioethics, and he is also editorial member for the 2 international journals. He holds numerous awards and recognition by their name. He has been awarded many times during international conferences throughout the world. He has been invited as a chief guest, as a resource person in the numerous conferences, and has chaired a lot of scientific sessions in his academic life and as well as their professional career. He has also given the numerous uh, lectures and numerous workshop has been conducted by Dr. Manoj Kumar Deshmukh sir in the very international conferences, and we are really privileged to have the resource person like Dr. Manoj Kumar Deshmukh sir with us, who is continuously working for the upgradation and upliftment of the profession of physical therapy, and our profession is achieving the heights just like just because of the professionals like you. So really thankful to you, sir. Thanks to you from the core of my heart. Thanks to you from the team Physio Inculcator for sparing your so much busy schedule to share your incredible thoughts on this less topic or untouched topic about biomechanics in neurorehabilitation. So again, welcome to you, sir. Welcome to you on the board. Thanking to you, sir. Over to you.
Thank you, Himanshu sir, and Harsh, Imrazdeep sir also, and all the team of Physio Inculcators, and to invite me and to communicate with you all. I feel very happy to communicate to the students like this, and we have some professionals here also. So I just welcome you all here. Okay. I just want to communicate with you also so that we have interactive session. Okay. Should not be like I'll always reading the slides and going on. It's not good from my side. Okay. So
Yes.
it will be good that we'll have two-way communication. Okay. So as Himanshu sir has already told me, and will also thank you Himanshu sir for your kind words, and which is more connected to the practitioner, and because nowadays everybody is focused to see the magic that I just want to give some treatment instantly I see the magic at all. But uh, apart from that special techniques and approaches, some biomechanical factors are also there which can influence the treatment or rehabilitation strategies in neurological rehabilitation. So I'm not going in detail about movement arms and then gravity, COG, and what are the factors which modify the muscle activities like that. I'll just try to show some videos during the intervention and as an example, and so that we can have an idea that during intervention or rehabilitation strategies, what are some important biomechanical factors that we should consider during rehabilitation of stroke and spinal injuries cases. Okay, so we'll start here. So first thing I want to show you people is the reaching activities. Okay, reaching activities I can say like when some hemiplegic patient will come to us or when some paraplegic patient come to us. So in upper extremity, the most functional activity is the reaching. Okay, we always try to tease the patient or we always try to make them practice to elevate their shoulder, and our one of the main objective or goal is to bring their arm in full range of motion. Okay, so to gain the full range of motion of any upper extremity movement, to achieve some reaching activities, I can say the main goal of this arm elevation and range of gaining the range of motion in upper extremity is to perform the functional activities in the form of reaching activities, like I can say. Okay, so during reaching activities, what biomechanical factors are there which can affect the shoulder movement and upper extremity movement? Okay, so I'll try to show one video. You just see that and try to analyze this. Okay, so I'll just repeat it once. He was trying to elevate his arm, his left side hemiplegic. Okay. Just see the second one. So differences you have noted, can anyone tell me what's the difference between these two videos or these two activities, I can say, that performed by same individual? And I'll tell the gap between these two activities was just like less than, can say. I did nothing like no approaches, no treatment. I another thing. Okay. And what's the anyone can unmute and then tell. No problem.
Okay, sir, I'm allowing the participant, though they can unmute, and I'm requesting all the participants, please unmute only whenever it is needed, it is being asked. And there is one request, sir, for you, that I think there is some voice break. So see if can be there better connectivity. Now any of the participant can unmute.
Okay.
If needed, yes.
Himanshu sir, just make me host. It was disconnected from my side.
Yes, sir, you are host now.
Yeah. anyone tell me the difference? No. I was trying to elevate the shoulder or upper extremity, I can say, but it's quite difficult for him. Okay, so what I did in second one, first one we can see that his sitting surface, you can see that the foot is not supported. Okay, and you just see the posture of the patient also. It's absolutely okay. Since the foot is supported, okay. See the sitting surface, see the posture of the patient. By taking the sitting surface only, and by putting foot on the foot, as foot is supported on the ground, the shoulder activity is increased. Okay. So this is one example. Like for reaching activities, what I want to say, some key points. Okay, one is shoulder musculature strength. I can say if there is no muscle strength, the patient will not able to elevate or not able to perform these activities. This is usual one. Okay, the second one, despite of normal muscular strength of the shoulder or the upper extremity, if trunk stability is not there in this position or in this activity, there will be difficulty to raise the upper extremity. Okay, I'll request everyone, you just go in high sitting position and make your posture like a slouch. Okay, go for slouch posture, just bend your trunk forward and try to elevate the both. You just do that. Go for slouch posture, okay, and try to elevate the both arms. Okay. Now second one, just support your foot on the ground and try to maintain the erect posture on your spine or trunk, and now elevate your both arms. There will be a huge difference in the range. Okay. So we are normal, I can say. Think about the patient. Okay. So what's the factor which are causing the limitation in the arm is the trunk stability. Okay, so how trunk stability can affect the shoulder strength? Because if trunk stability is not there, it can affect the movement at the upper extremity and neck both. Okay, so to provide the stability during this activity, we have to just consider that during rehabilitation activities or during treatment, we have to see patient who is supported or not. If I want to see a good movement, to see a good result, then during this activity, the support should be there. Okay. For instance, pelvis reaching. Now, in this position, we can see, you can see the picture also. If cases like stroke and paraplegia also, it is more common in paraplegia. If hamstring tightness is there, so tightness of hamstring can pull the pelvis posteriorly. Okay, so because of that, a posterior pelvic tilt occurs, and because of posterior pelvic tilt, the compensatory movement occurs at the spine, that is kyphosis, or we can say a slouch posture is there. Okay, it's a compensatory movement. Okay, so if hamstring is too much tight and we are asking the patient to sit with unsupported foot or non with supported foot also, sometimes because of hamstring tightness, the pelvis pulls posteriorly. So if posterior pelvic tilt is there, then cause compensatory kyphosis at the spine. So always trunk stability is hampered. Okay, so because of lack of trunk stability, the patient will face a difficulty during this elevation activities of the upper extremity. Okay, the next one, we can say a trunk stability is lacking because of lack of eccentric control from the trunk extensor. Okay, if patient muscular strength is very good, okay, sometimes patient complains that I'm able to sit, I'm able to pull myself from supine to sitting position, okay, because the abdominal strength are good. But when the patient comes in the sitting position, he automatically goes for slouch posture. Okay, that's a postural adaptation. So slouch posture, there are two reasons. One is kyphosis because of posterior pelvic tilt, because of tight hamstring or excessive spastic hamstring, I can say. And second one is lack of eccentric control from erector spinae. So we know that erector spinae acts as a trunk extensor. When our body, imagine that as a line. If line goes forward, so we are going towards the gravity when we are bending our trunk or when we are maintaining our erect position. So these two muscle, abdominal and erector spinae, has to co-contract to provide the stability in spine. If eccentric control is lacking from erector spinae, that can cause a trunk to go forward, that's towards gravity. Okay, so to maintain that during forward bending, eccentric control, a good eccentric control of trunk extensor is needed. Okay, so three things we have to keep in mind during rehabilitation or during these reaching activities or shoulder elevation. Okay, the three biomechanical factor is, one is eccentric control from erector spinae is there or not, trunk stability is there or not, okay, and foot support is there or not, or is tightness of hamstring hampers the stability. Okay, so these are some variable or example that how trunk instability and hamstring factors affect the shoulder movement. Okay, now next activity is sit to stand activity. Okay, so we know that because of hemiplegia, if one side lower extremity weakness is there, because of quadriceps and adductor spasticity, the patient faces difficulty in standing position. That's from sitting to standing activity, I can say. Okay, and there is also spasticity in plantar flexion. So patient faces difficulty to put a counter force at the ground level if foot is supported there. Okay, so what are some factors which can hamper the sit to stand activities during rehabilitation? We just see one video. Just see again how patient is standing from sitting position. Now see the second. Okay. So what's the difference? Can anyone tell me? What's the difference? Okay. So in first one, yes. So the difference is
greater than the stability is more.
height of sitting surface, we can say. And what's the difference in activities in both one?
Trunk flexion.
Is there any change in standing activity? Trunk flexion.
Trunk flexion is increased.
Trunk flexion.
Okay. So nobody noticed this one. Momentum from the upper extremity. He's trying to see here. Okay. Now, if you'll see the next one, just see that he's very comfortable with the standing. Okay. What can be the reason? Because in previous one, the patient will have to put extra effort to stand from lower height of sitting surface. So if we'll just increase the sitting height, the patient would be strength. In quadriceps, patient is able to stand, but because of lower height of sitting surface, patient put a momentum and cannot put force properly to stand from sitting surface. Okay, so some important factors are biomechanical factors are there. Height affected also and trunk muscle strength during the standing activities. Okay, how anterior translation can affect the standing activity? We'll again see this one. We can see that when patient is trying to stand from the first one, height is not lower than the tibial length. Okay, so there is a anterior translation of the body. That's the anterior forward bending of the body towards the gravity to gain the momentum and to lower the center of gravity or line of gravity. Okay, and to decrease, we can say to decrease the line of gravity and to lower the center of gravity also, our body tends to move forward. Okay, we can again have one demonstration there. You just go and sit in any surface, okay, and try to maintain erect posture strictly. Okay, you just sit in the chair, try to maintain the erect posture, don't bend forward, and try to stand. Just try to stand and tell me that how many of you have stand normally. Don't move forward, just try to sit in erect position and try to stand. It's very difficult. Hardly 1 to 2 people can stand. Okay, and now you can see the difference. Just slightly bend your trunk and then stand. Okay, it's quite easier. So what we are doing, we are just reducing the. Okay, we are moving our body weight towards the gravity so that we can generate a torque effectively to raise the body weight knee joint as a lever arm, I can say. Okay, so anterior translation is very important factor. Okay, because of spasticity in hemiplegics. Okay, they like there is affected dissociation between the pelvic and the lumbar movement. Okay, so we can say it's a like rigid one. There is no dissociation between the hip, pelvis, or trunk in that type of cases because of spasticity. So when we ask the patient to go for standing activities, he will face difficult, and we again used to repeat that activities with the patient. And sometimes it happens that despite of like lots of repetition, patient cannot learn that movement. Okay, if he have some good strength also. The main reason is there is no anterior translation of the pelvis. Okay, it's a very important component. So we should focus also there. Before asking the patient or before practicing the patient to go for standing from the sitting surface or from the sitting position, we just have to practicing the patient for anterior pelvic tilt with anterior translation of the body. Okay, it's very important factor. Okay, and if it's spasticity causing the problem, so first we have to inhibit the overactive muscle to make the proper dissociation at the pelvis and lumbar. Okay, so one is anterior translation. Now next one is pelvic tilt and dissociation that I already told. Okay, apart from when whole body is going forward, we can see here pelvic tilt and dissociation is also one of the important factors. The next one is chair height. Okay, one study was conducted in the stroke population that does the height of sitting surface affect the sit to stand activities in hemiplegics. Okay, so there was significant difference in higher sitting surfaces and the lower sitting surfaces for sit to stand activities. Okay, but they were not able to contribute the proper height of the chair because each individual have a different tibial length. Okay, for sitting activities the tibial length is a very important factor. So averagely we can say sitting surface should be little bit higher than our tibial length. Okay, so that we can ask the patient and it will be easier for the patient to go for standing activities. Clear? So what we can do when we are asking the patient for practicing the sit to stand activities, we should always start from the higher sitting surface, and the progression we can make to make some difficult for the patient or a progression, we can reduce the chair height. So initially highest the chair height should be more than the tibial height, I say. Okay, so it will be very easier for the patient to generate the torque at the knee joint and to come in the stand position from the sitting one. Okay, and progression we can make, like we can reduce the height of the chair. Okay, the next one is foot placement, very important for hemiplegic patient. Okay, the non-affected foot if we place backward and affected foot if we'll ask the patient to make forward one, it will be very easier for the patient to come in the stand position. Okay, the exact mechanism is unknown till now, but it has been seen in EMG activities also. When we'll ask the patient to place the unaffected foot forward and affected foot backward. Okay, so it is very easy for the patient to perform the standing activities. The next one is trunk muscle strength. Okay, again we can see here in this image when patient is trying to stand from the sitting surface and when he is getting the momentum as anterior translation of the body with the pelvic tilt, anterior pelvic tilt, we can see that trunk is bending. So again trunk stability is needed for standing activities. Okay, so eccentric control of back extensor again here is one important factor. Okay, now here gluteal eccentric control is also important factor. Okay, in this image we can see the foot getting a momentum from the chair, and when he extended his knees, so we can see the back one, back line, erector spinae, that's a trunk extensor, and gluteal muscle. These both eccentric control should be very good to maintain this posture. Okay, so these are some key points or biomechanical factors which can affect the standing activities of the patient. Okay, so anterior translation of body we have to practice first for the patient, then pelvic tilt and dissociation. Okay, and the factor which can affect this anterior translation and pelvic tilt and dissociation is spasticity in neurological cases. If flaccidity is there, then absolutely no muscle strength can cause a lack of stability. Okay, so if muscle strength is not there, so stability will also be not there. And if muscle is spastic, it can cause a like lack of segmental movements or segmental dissociation, we can say. It makes the body as a rigid, we can say. Okay, so if whole body will move, it's very difficult to stand from the sitting. Okay, so pelvic tilt and dissociation. Another one, the third point is always we should start from the more chair height, and then we can progress towards the lower chair height. Okay, next one is placement of the foot. Okay, so affected foot should be placed backward and non-affected foot should be placed forward. Next one is trunk muscle strength. Okay, so trunk muscle strength is also a very important factor. Okay, now the next one is bridging exercise. Okay, I can say it's a favorite exercise of all the physiotherapists. Okay, any back pain problem, any cases we are dealing like spinal injuries, cerebral palsy, or stroke cases, the first exercise we use to prescribe the patient is breathing exercise. Okay, am I right? Okay, but the main aim of breathing exercise is to strengthen the trunk muscle, okay, and to increase the lumbosacral stability. Okay, but in breathing exercise, we never consider the placement of lower extremity. Okay, like what can be the knee flexion angle, what can be the hip angle during the breathing exercise, what can be the placement of upper extremity. Does these factors like angulation of the knee joint, angulation of the ankle, and placement of the upper extremity, it affects the recruitment of the muscle? Yes, definitely. It has been proven by the research also. Okay, we'll just see one video here. Okay, just see the trunk movement. Here patient is performing with maximum knee flexion. Now he is raising the knee flexion, and then see the activity. Okay, this was second one. Okay, so this is how we can ask the patient to go for breathing exercise. Okay, so here what can be the factors which can affect the muscle recruitment pattern, or if I'll say vice versa, if I want to target specific muscle during the rehabilitation of neurological cases, does that changing the knee flexion angle or hip abduction angle or hip angle can be a good way to target the isolated muscle for strengthening? Okay, yes, definitely the knee flexion angle and hip angle can affect the muscle recruitment pattern. Okay, so here some factors are knee flexion angle, hip joint abduction angle, muscle activation pattern that is related to this knee, ankle, and hip placement, and hand placement during the breathing exercise. Okay, one research was conducted that with the different knee flexion angle, what muscle recruitment is more with each angulation, we can say. Okay, so they just experimented in normal individual with 4 angles. One is 40 degree, 60 degree, 100 degree, okay, and 90 degree. Okay, and in these 4 angles, they just examined which muscle is more recruited with each position like that. Okay, so their study concluded that with the 100 degree of knee flexion, gluteus, so gluteus along with gluteus maximus and biceps femoris activity ratio, this both muscle in this breathing exercise we can see when we are going for knee flexion at about 100 degree. Okay, biceps femoris muscle also contracts. So the ratio between these two muscle contraction is also improved. Okay, so we can say in 100 degree of knee flexion, gluteus maximus muscle is more activated. In 40 degree of knee flexion, internal oblique, external oblique, and biceps femoris. Okay, and 60 degree knee flexion angle, when we'll move our extremity from this area, or we can say when we are going for leg extension. Okay, so beyond 90 degree we can say like 60 degree knee flexion angle, trunk muscle activation was improved, like increased erector spinae and rectus abdominis muscle So when we are reducing the knee flexion angle, or when we are extending our leg, when we are moving far from the pelvis area, the lever arm is increased. Okay, from pelvis to foot, that lever arm, when it is increased, it causes more stability to the trunk, and because of that trunk stability, the trunk extensor, that rectus spinae and rectus abdominis muscle recruitment was increased. Okay, so if I want to focus on gluteus maximus muscle in bridging exercise, just place your hand beside your support is there. Okay, there is no significant difference in muscle recruitment pattern. It just increases the stability to provide more, to generate more force or more torque for better performance. Okay, so initial one, when patient facing difficulty for bridging activity, what we can ask, we can upper extremity on the ground to just increase the base of support and to create the counter force to lift the pelvis. Okay, so that he can generate the more force or more torque. Okay, and then gradually we can ask the patient to unsupport or remove the support from the upper extremity. Okay, so this is very important one. Now the next one is spasticity and knee flexion. Okay. Okay. So many times those who are practitioner also and those who are in internship, many times we used to hear that earlier stage when patient was affected with the stroke or like that, when he was in spastic stage, like when spasticity was peak, he was very comfortable for walking. Despite his walking pattern was not normal, but he was able to stand, he was able to walk with spastic muscle. And when we start to treat the spastic muscle, like Botox has been given, or anti-spastic exercises when we'll increase, or when we'll excessively stress the spastic muscle, the patient loses stability and he's not able to stand also. Okay, many patients complain this. Like in earlier stage, I was able to stand, I was able to walk, though my walking pattern was not normal. It was like circumdatory movement because of spasticity, but I was able to walk. Okay, but when Botox has been given or when anti-spastic treatment has been given, I loses my stability. I'm facing difficulty for standing one. Okay, so what the factor which can cause this type of problem? Okay, so we should always remember that spasticity is good for some activities also. Is not spasticity is not always bad, because spastic muscle always provides stability to the joint. If excessive tone is the problem, that can cause abnormal synergy pattern and hamper the isolated muscle action. Okay, that's the biggest problem with the spasticity. But apart from this problem, the spasticity is good for providing the stability during standing one and walking also. Okay, and suppose what we used to do when patient with lower extremity spasticity, like mostly quadriceps or extensor synergy pattern has been seen, in that quadriceps spasticity and calf spasticity is more. Okay, so here the ratio of this or we can say a compound action of this muscle causes stability of knee joint. It provides the stability during standing when patient started walking. Okay, so from anterior side the thigh, and from posterior side the calf one. Okay, from posterior side the spastic calf will pull the leg backwards, the tibia backwards. Okay, and from anterior side the quadriceps, it can cause extension torque at the knee joint. Okay, so backward side calf is pulling backward and anterior side quadriceps is causing extension of the knee joint. Okay, so this both muscle as a compound action, it will provide the stability. And if it is spastic, when calf muscle is spastic, and normally when foot is not supported, it goes for plantar flexion. And if you support the leg and patient is try to stand, so the origin part tends to move the tibia backward because of tightness of the muscle, because of spasticity or shortening of the muscle. That can cause the stability of the patient or hyperextension also there. Okay, that's why in this type of cases, when patient stands, we always see a hyperextension. That's excessive pulling of calf from the back side. Okay, but this is good for patient because of this activity, the patient able to stand, stability is also good there, and patient able to walk also because of stability. But spasticity, we know that spasticity causes abnormal synergy. That's a problem. So what we can do in our daily practice, our what we used to do is we used to stretch the quadriceps, we used to stretch the calf muscle, okay, simultaneously. All the spastic muscle we used to stretch daily. This is our daily practice routine, okay, when we deal with this type of cases. So initially what we can do is to avoid that type of situation, we have to stretch only one muscle. Okay, like if we see that quadriceps causing more problem, like we want to do for that circumflexion movement. So first we'll inhibit that quadriceps overactivity, will not stretch it, will inhibit the overactivity, will perform some anti-spastic exercises, weight bearing exercises, and then we'll try to deal first with the quadriceps. We'll leave the calf one, okay, and when patient stands, stability, if gradually he gains the stability, then we can progress for stretching or some inhibition exercises for calf muscle. So the main thing I want to say is do not overstretch the muscle at the same time. That's why we use a selective stretch in this type of cases. Okay, according to activity, what muscle we have to stretch or what muscle we have to reduce their overactivity, it should be always focused. Okay, so another one is gluteus muscle and tendo-Achilles combined action. We know that gluteus maximus muscle causes hip extension. So their torque, we can say a resultant force. It can cause a backward pulling of the femur, and from lower side the calf, we can see the resultant force which causing a posterior, creating a posterior torque at the knee. Okay, so this both muscle can cause extension at the knee joint. Okay, if it is overactive. If it is normal, then this muscle function is always accompanied with the anterior side of thigh muscles like quadriceps. Okay, so if gluteus maximus is spastic, calf is spastic, it can also cause a hyperextension at the knee joint. So sometimes this overactive of this or compound activity of this muscle causes stability. So if we see that because of this muscle spasticity or because of overactivity of this muscle, if patient is able to stand, so it's a good thing. We should allow them to go for weight bearing exercises, because we know that spinal injury patients or hemiplegic patients, weight bearing exercises is very good to reduce the spasticity. Okay, so selective stretch we should always focus during spastic when we are treating the spastic muscle of lower extremity. Okay, now next one is eccentric versus concentric exercises. Okay, generally it has been seen that we used to practice with the concentric exercises more, but studies suggest and concluded that concentric exercises causes more, it increases the spasticity more. Okay, so along with concentric exercises, eccentric exercises should also be focused with upper extremity and lower extremity and trunk muscles. Okay, we'll see some example here. Just try to see the patient activity here. Okay, so here patient is trying to go for sitting to supine, but he's facing difficulty here, and we can see that difficulty. How we can recognize that he is extending his bilateral extremity. One, we can say because of overactivity or spastic muscle, that lower extremity was extended, but normal one also extended. So he is trying to keep more effort from lower extremity also. It's a referred action, we can say. Okay. Now see here, when he is going forward and when he is bending the trunk, he is very it's very difficult for him. There is a fear. Okay. So here the problem is, sometimes patient says that I am able to sit from supine position, but not able to go from supine from sitting to supine position. Okay, many of you have been heard this one in daily routine practices. Okay, spinal injury patient or stroke patients, hemiplegic patients, they always used to say that I am able to sit. I am able to bring myself from supine to sitting position, but from sitting, when I try to go for sitting to supine, it's very difficult for me. There is no control. So what's the problem? Okay, so concentric versus eccentric word here comes. Always remember that when we are for towards the gravity movement, when we are performing towards the gravity, so opposite group of muscle always causes eccentric contraction. Okay, and when we are going against gravity, so that agonist muscle acts as a concentric contraction, and towards the gravity, the opposite muscle causes eccentric control. Okay, so if we are focusing more on the concentric exercises, will always improve the concentric strength, will not focus on the eccentric one. So same problem occurs here. When patient is trying to come from supine to sitting position, the abdominal strength is good. That's a concentric strength. And when he is trying to go from sitting to supine one, his eccentric control is not good. That's why it's difficult for them to go for sitting to supine. Okay. So what I'm trying to say is some important factor is eccentric control of abdominal. So eccentric control we always focus for strengthening. So eccentric exercises also should be performed to provide good stability. Okay, I given an example for this one, that patient faces difficulty to go for supine sitting to supine activity. Okay, when he is going from sitting to not that level that it can control the trunk, so patient will face difficulty. So we should also try to engage some eccentric exercises with this type of patient. Okay, like when we are treating the hemiplegic or spinal injury patients also. Okay, next one is eccentric control of back extensor. When it comes, like first one we have seen that if eccentric control is lack there, so trunk goes for kyphosis, that's the bending of the trunk one. Second, if eccentric control is not good, so when when patient tries to stand, some patients complain that when I'm try to go for standing one, my body tends to move forward. When I take a step, I go more forward, I loses the stability. Okay, that's example. So when there is lack of eccentric control from the back extensor, the patient will not able to maintain the erect posture. Okay, a little bit forward movement of the trunk can cause uncontrollable bending of the trunk, and patient used to fall during these exercises. That's the reason. Okay, same thing. Patient says that I am able to extend my trunk when I perform these activities in prone line, but I'm not able to go forward when I'm not able to bend my trunk when we are performing towards the gravity movement that we have seen in the video. Okay, so eccentric control of back extensor exercises, how we can perform? We can ask the patient to sit in the corner of the couch, and we can give a support and ask the patient to come with my hand forward. Okay, with my hand support, I can ask the patient to come forward little bit. So in this way, we can train the eccentric control of the back. And same, if I will place our hand, we'll give support to the patient, and we'll ask the patient to just go backward slowly and progress it. So we'll training for the eccentric control of the abdominals. Okay. So same thing, some patient complains that when I take steps for walking activities, my pelvis tends to bend. Okay, so that's a lack of eccentric control of the gluteus muscle. Okay, so this is also one important factor. And standing to sitting activities. When we try to stand, when we stand from sitting one, that's a concentric activity of the quadriceps. And when we try to sitting from standing one, okay, that's a completely eccentric control from quadriceps to gluteus and gluteus muscle. There is no hamstring function. Okay, so we usually thought that when we are going from standing to sitting, knee flexion occurs, so hamstring muscle causes this movement. The hamstring only causes the initiation of the movement, but whole control of this movement is controlled by eccentric contraction of quadriceps muscle. Okay, so remember that sitting to standing, concentric activity of quadriceps, standing to sitting, eccentric of quadriceps and gluteus muscle. Okay, so if eccentric control is not there, not good, and patient tries to sit, so he usually used to fall down. Okay, there is no control, and when we'll ask the patient to go for standing one from the sitting, he is very good for standing activities. Okay, so that's the reason. So eccentric exercise of erector spinae, eccentric exercise of abdominal, and eccentric exercise of quadriceps and gluteus muscle. It is very important for preparatory exercises of the gait and for trunk stability. Okay. Now, another one is some researchers also shows that I have not mentioned here in the slide. Some researchers also shows that when we'll ask the patient to practice some exercises. Okay. 1 minute. See, just here on my, I'll explain. So also says that suppose we are treating the patient with the hemiplegia, okay, and perform some trunk exercises. And whatever daily practices, we ask them to sit in a so change surface in one, or like patient is standing here in the floor or in some mat, and when we'll change their inclination angle, okay, so there is reduction in shoulder relaxation amount. One research was also conducted, and this same research we followed with my student in the project. It good result also. Okay, so by changing the inclination angle, the muscle function or muscle recruitment pattern also changes. Okay, like when I want to perform hip flexion or knee flexion exercises for spinal injury patients, what we used to do, if patient muscle strength is grade 1 and I have to progress for grade 2, okay, so for grade 2, what we used to do, we ask the patient to be in the horizontal position, that's the sideline, and in sideline we ask the patient to go for hip flexion, and that's active assisted exercises or suspension exercises. Or another one is re-education board exercises. We used to provide the re-education board and ask the patient to go for knee flexion and knee flexion, combined hip and knee flexion activities. But if I want to progress from grade 2 to grade 3, what we can do? We'll just turn the patient and ask that come in the supine one and then go for anti-gravity movement. Okay, that's a progression we can say. How we have to progress for grade 2 to grade 3 strengthening exercises. But you think that after grade 2, the patient will able to raise his lower extremity, like from sideline. If I ask the patient to go for hip and knee flexion, and he will perform again in supine position, it's very difficult for them. So what we can do, when we are providing them a re-education board, we can just change the inclination angle. Like if this is the inclination angle, or here patient is performing exercises, so we can what we can do is we can tilt this one little bit. So patient will perform some exercises here for knee extension and hip flexion. Okay, and knee flexion also. So knee extension will be, so knee extension progression has to be there from grade 2 to grade exercise. From this inclination angle, if I change this one, listen for them. So don't go directly like this. So progress of the patient to gravity, move, and then ask the movement. So this progression, okay. One also, if I study what that, if I will change the surface stability, like if we'll ask the patient to go for unstable surface, standing in one leg, standing on support, standing on uneven surfaces. So shoulder muscle, muscular strength recruitment pattern was also changes. Okay, so it has been seen by changing the stability of the supported surface, the shoulder subluxation amount, because there is a co-contraction of the shoulder muscle which causes pulling of the humerus towards the acromion process. That's reducing the gap between them. So the thing, like small thing can say, we do to neglect this and also. If anyone have any, you can discuss here. Most welcome for the questions.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for such a great insight into the biomechanics and its practical implication in the neurorehabilitation. So it has given us a different perspective of thinking while rehabilitating the patient with the neurological problems. Thanking you, sir. Thanks a lot for great insight. And we would like to invite all the participants, if anyone has any query, they can ask. And very interestingly, sir, we had the participants from around 5 countries here for this session, and we are maintaining 100% attendance throughout the session. For this session, we had the participant from Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, West Bengal, USA. So we are really thankful to you for sharing your great in-depth knowledge in the biomechanical implication in the neurorehabilitation. So it is the aura of your talk that we had so much, even senior faculty members also joins us. Dr. Amita Anup Sharma ma'am, she is the senior physical therapist at Saudi Arabia. She also joins us for this session. We are also receiving great feedbacks and in the chat box regarding this session. This was really a great session, and we had a great in-depth knowledge of the biomechanical implication. I would like to thank to the my teacher, my mentor, Dr. Harsh Rajiv sir, Dr. Charu Sharma ma'am, and Dr. Ritu ma'am for their continued support, love, and blessings. We are also much thankful that we had the very senior participants and faculty members also joins us during the session. So we are really thankful to you all the participants for patiently listening us, joining us, and attending the session very carefully. Thanks to you. Sincere thanks to the resource person of the day, Manoj sir, for sharing their great in-depth information and about the biomechanical implication. In spite of having a lot of technical issue today, he has somehow managed the session and delivered the great informative talk on the platform. A sincere gratitude to you, sir, for such a great commitment towards the professional upgradation and for the knowledge sharing. Really thankful to you for this effort.
Thank you so much.
I think there is no more questions available in the chat box, sir. So we would again like to invite if anyone has any query, they can ask. Either they can write in the chat box or they can unmute themselves and then ask the queries. If anyone has so. I think there is some connectivity issue with Manoj sir. There is some intermittent disconnection happens, but still he had delivered a great talk, a great lecture on a much needed topic, the biomechanics and its implication in neurorehabilitation. Really thankful to you, sir. Manoj sir, can you please hear us? No audible, sir? Manoj sir?
Anyone you can, what is nice to see there. You can also mail if wants more detail, there is some confusion. Okay.
So your voice is a bit breaking, sir. Can you please provide your sir mail ID or contact number in the chat box? Then if anybody has any query, they can even uh, ask you personally if it is allowed. I think sir is again disconnected. So I would like to inform all the participants that again tomorrow we have a great session on functional electrical stimulation by Dr. Ankur Mittal sir. So please do join us tomorrow at 9 p.m. for our uh, upcoming session on the functional electrical stimulation. We had already updated around hundreds of webinars on our YouTube channel, The Physio Inculcator. If anyone wants to wishes to revise it and review the any of the webinar session, they can go to our YouTube channel, The Physio Inculcator, and then you can see all the webinar session. Even one international conference session, panel discussion, and interview has been uploaded there just for free for the knowledge share. Thanking you all for your such great effort. Sir. Okay, sir. So So thanks a lot to the all participants for joining us. I just talked with the Manoj sir. Actually, there is some technical issue with them. He may not be able to join us again. So if anyone has any query, they can ask me, and I can, or you can ask me for the contact number of Manoj sir. So I can provide you the contact number, and then you can ask the any of the queries with the directly with the resource person. Thanking you all for your kind support and blessings. We'll meet again tomorrow at 9 p.m. So till then, stay safe, stay blessed, take care, good night. Thanking you all again.